So let's start part 3 of section or unit 4 of personal finance. Here we're going to talk about cash, stocks, bonds, the Securities Exchange Commission, and alternative investments. Cash investments such as deposits in savings account or money in a money market account have almost no risk. These investments are low risk because the government agencies such as the FDIC protect the deposit consumers make in banks and guarantee that this money will keep its value. Money in a saving account gains a small amount of interest slowly over time. It doesn't have the potential to grow at a high speed or in large amounts. Stocks, on the other hand, are a popular type of equity investment in which you buy partial ownership of a company in tiny fractional amounts called a share. Stocks are often called equities. Some companies issue dividends to stockholders. A dividend is a payment you receive as a stockholder. Usually a company issues dividend payments to stockholders at regular intervals throughout the year. The value of an individual company's stock can change based on things that are happening in that company. If a company launches a successful new product, the company's stock might increase in value. Bonds are types of debt investment in which you lend money to a company or the government, and the company or government gives you a document called a bond. The bond is a promise that the company or government will pay you back a specific amount on a specific date in the future. So you are promised a specific return on your investment. Bonds from a stable and reliable company or government are fairly safe. Which of the following is a reason to purchase a bond? To guarantee a high rate of return, to make sure you'll be able to withdraw the money quickly, to receive a specific reliable return on your investment, or to invest in a specific business or company. If you said a good reason to purchase a bond is to receive a specific reliable return on your investment, you're correct. Securities are investment opportunities such as stock or bonds represented by a document. This document is usually paper, but sometimes it's an online computer-based document. The SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, is a U.S. government agency with the purpose of regulating securities. One of the main roles of the SEC, again, is protecting investors from fraud. Fraud is illegal, dishonest behavior of an individual or company. The SEC deals with fraud that's designed to cheat investors out of their money. The SEC helps to protect investors and prevent fraud, but it can't guarantee the value or stability of a security. In order to sell stock on the public stock market, companies must register with the SEC. Registered stocks are stocks that have been through the SEC's registration process. A company that has registered its stock with the SEC is required to make a regular disclosure to investors about the company's finances. Disclosure is the act of making information known. In addition to registering stocks and making sure companies provide financial disclosure, the SEC has other duties. The SEC often makes recommendations to the government about changes to laws or rules that might help the SEC do more to prevent fraud or protect investors. Now, not all companies offer stock, but major companies sell stock to the public through the stock market. A publicly held stock is registered stock that is available to the general public. Stocks and other securities that are traded in the public must be registered with the SEC. A privately held stock is an unregistered stock that is not traded on public markets, Companies that issue privately held stocks usually do so to a very small number of investors. So, which of the following is a risk of investing in a privately held company instead of a publicly held company? The price of the stock can change quickly. The investment probably won't have a high reward. The company might have oh, the company might not have potential for growth, or the investment isn't regulated by the SEC. Well, we talked a lot about the SEC, and I think a private stock is not registered. So, right, the investment isn't regulated by the SEC. There are many alternative investments. You can have real estate when you invest in the purchase of a property, building, or land. There's what's called an annuity, which is an agreement you can make with an insurance company in which you pay the company a specific amount of money and the insurance company agrees to pay you back a larger amount in the future. You might decide to lend money to an individual or business and then charge interest. Private equity investments are investments made in private companies. These companies can be any size, but individual investors often make private equity investments to small businesses. An investment commodity is a very basic good or service. Commodities have utility for the majority of customers, and they are almost always needs instead of wants. Examples are corn, oil, lumber, steel, gold, beef, and many other things that are all examples of commodities. You can invest also in a currency of a country because many people are converting their money to that currency. If it goes up in value compared to others, which has usually been the dollar, you would actually make an increased rate of return. Or you might be just really good at something or collecting things and you purchase collectible items that might increase in value. An example is you bought a $5 baseball card of a player who's very popular and talented today, but if you keep that card, it might increase in value. So let's look at alternative investments in a little more, in a little different way. Let me actually stop and make this a little bigger so we can see it all. There we go. So to match the items, click the type of investment and then click the name. So real estate. Well, that's going to be a house or condominium. Foreign exchange is like currency. Might be bonds from another country. A share in it, let's see, lending would be if I loan a family member $500. Let's see, collectibles might be a rare and expensive painting. An angel investment, it's probably an investment in, let's see here, in a company at its early stage. And a commodity, well, that's going to be something we need, like wheat. Okay, so in part 3 of section 4, or unit 4, personal finance, we talked about cash, stocks, and bonds, the Security Exchange Commission, known as the SEC, and alternative investments. Now we're going to talk a little bit about investment accounts, the stock market, and investment income. Investment account is a diversified account that a finance professional will help maintain for you. It can be a 401 plan, which is a retirement account. Employees can invest part of their income into a 401 without paying taxes on that income. A mutual fund is a company that takes money from investors, pools that money, and then invests the money. And an index fund is a fund that works similarly to a mutual fund, except that instead of being managed by an investment expert, it's set up to track the overall performance of the stock market. And there are also special investment accounts available for people saving for their children's education. And these funds are usually set up by a parent or family member. So if I'm going to retire, which of these following types of accounts offers tax-deferred investment for retirement? Well, it's either a 401k plan, a mutual fund, a prepaid 529 plan, or an index fund. If you said 401k plan, you're correct. That actually is not taxed, although you have to cash it in at a certain age. If you want to buy a stock, you go to a broker, which is a financial professional who buys and sells stock and other securities on behalf of an investor. A stock market is a market where stock and other securities are bought, sold, and traded. We have the New York Stock Exchange, which is located in New York City, and the NASDAQ. There are certain stock market indicators. There's the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is an indicator of how stocks are performing over time. There's a Standard & Poor's Index, which is another commonly used indicator of how stocks are doing. And there's the NASDAQ, which is a composite index which also tracks a set of representative stocks in the NASDAQ stock market. Since there's so many companies with so many names, a stock has what's called a ticker symbol, which is a combination of 3 or 4 letters. The ticker symbol for Apple is APPL. The ticker symbol for Google is GOOG. And that's how we can track our stocks. So, which of the following is usually found in a stock listing? Number of people who purchased the stock, the price of the stock was selling for at the opening of business day, the price the stock was selling in the middle of the business day, or the predicted price for the stock over 52 weeks. If you said the price of the stock was selling for at the opening of business day, you were correct. Now, there is a capital gain, which is an increase in value of an equity investment, which is created by what's called appreciation. If you sell stocks, shares of stocks for a higher price than you paid for them, you have a gain. Remember, some stocks have dividends, which are a type of income that comes from an equity investment. Companies sometimes give dividends to their investors when the company is making profit. Interest is the money charged for an additional fee or borrowed money. The borrower pays interest to make the lender willing to give them temporary control over his or her money. Rent is also investment income. If I own like a condominium that I'm not living in and I rent it out, I can make money on that. Rent is the amount a person or a company pays you in order to use that of what you own. A home or office building can be rented for a monthly cost. The renter pays the owner money in exchange for using the space. So which type of investment income happens when a company shares its profits with investors? Capital gains, well, that's the money I make on an investment. Interest is the money I make on loaning money. Dividends is when someone gets its profits shared. A dividend is when a company decides to share its profit with its investors. So in this lesson you learned about investment accounts, the stock market, and investment income.